So Ultimate Freyna just dropped today, and in an unsurprising turn of events, she can pretty easily fuck just about all the solo bosses into the ground. The surprising part is, more so, that if you look at the clips in the background, you won't see me getting a single critical hit. The reason for which is some new mods released today that completely change how some characters, including Freyna, will be built going forward, and that is part of what we'll talk about along with the math to prove it. But just to preempt the replies, if you ever see anyone trying to tell you to build full crit on Freyna and some other characters we'll talk about later, they have not even tried to figure out the math. But let's go ahead and start talking about what we're using along with why we're using it, starting with the boss build. For general survivability, we are using increased shield, overwhelming shield, HP conversion shield, simply because we want to pump our shield as high as we can get it. It's just going to make life a lot more comfy for you guys, though it is not required. But the reason is because the new Venom injection mod for Freyna makes it so instead of the standard Thorns type effect you'd normally get on your second ability, it replaces it with something that makes it so you gain increased skill power modifier proportional to your missing health while it is active. And then all your skill damage reduces the enemy's toxin resistance. And if you don't understand the value in that, please go watch my video on enemy DR. But while that sounds really good, the downside is that while the ability is toggled on, you constantly drain health. And then if you have no more health to drain, it will never kill you, by the way, it'll stop at 1. Then you will drain MP instead. But this isn't really that big of a deal since you're going to blow most bosses off the face of the planet before they can even come close to killing you. But a hidden gem with this ability is that it will recover while active 5% of your max shields per second. And this does not depend on your combat state, which is like your components, the shield regen in combat, shield regen out of combat. If you're in combat, you're damaging something, but you are considered neither in combat or out of combat if you're taking damage. And so normally your component shield regen is kind of shit when you're actively getting hit, but this doesn't even care. This regens whether you're getting hit or not. It is constant. And because we've built into shields here, that means that when we activate our ability, we instantly get the full bonus with no wind-up since we're already missing all of our health. We don't need to have a wind-up. And then even if you're getting shot at before you kill the boss, or even if you're standing in lava before the boss dies, you're still not going to die. Again, building in 2 shields is not required here. It's just a comfort thing. We'll talk about how you can change it later in favor of HP for more tanky bosses. Now for boosting our damage, for skill power ratios, we have Focus on Toxic, Dangerous Ambush, Spear and Shield, Venom Syncytium, and then the new Toxic Amplification mod, which is kind of nuts because it gives you negative 140% crit damage, but just wait a bit and we'll talk about that. To pump our damage a little higher, we continue and boost our skill power modifier, not power ratio, using Focus on Tech as well as another new mod, Tech Amplification, which again might look weird because it gives us negative 140% crit rate. Again, we'll talk about it in a moment. Next is our weapon, because it absolutely matters and a lot of people seem to miss that. Ideally, you'll use a green ammo weapon. I personally am using the Zystra's Devotion, but you can get away with using Secret Garden too, though it won't actually make a difference on this part in particular, and I will explain. For the mods, you want to have Expand Weapon Charge and then either Concentrate Support Ammo or Magazine Compulsive. It's not a very big deal which one you use. Technically, Compulsive is better, but not by much. And then on the weapon rolls, you do want to try and get a rounds per magazine row. Though like the mag mods mentioned before, you don't need to stress getting a perfect roll on that. Just get whatever you can and go with it. The reasoning for which is Venom Baptism, which is Freyna's 4th ability and unique weapon, is like Haley's Zenith, in that the skill itself has a base magazine size, but despite being different from your equipped weapon, it still benefits from the magazine bonuses on your equipped weapon. So more magazine bonus means more shots on the ult. Along those same lines, just like Lepic, Baptism benefits from fire rate bonuses as well. So additionally, you're going to want to have the fire rate up module along with probably sharp precision shot as well, which will ramp up the fire rate the longer you hold the trigger, but it provides a negative fire rate bonus up front. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you aren't going to hold the trigger the whole time, or if you're going to get interrupted, just take that off because it'll be a damage loss and that's okay. For your reactor, you obviously want a Tech Toxin reactor. If you don't understand, go watch my video on reactors and skill power. And then for the reactor subs, you want skill attack against Colossus, and that is the most important role to get. Even if you get that and nothing else, that's great. Take it. And then the secondary role best in slot would be tech power ratio. The reactor weapon, as mentioned earlier, is not a huge deal. So long as you are able to get all the right mods on there, then you're fine. For components, it needs to be Slayer. That is the set you get from Pyro for more reason than one. But the first of which is Slayer provides a magazine bonus, which means more shots. And then on top of that, it gives a base power ratio bonus, which is the same type of bonus as Dangerous Ambush, and that's kind of fucking nuts. Real quick to address the people that say, what about Secret Garden? Secret Garden is super cool for Freyna, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't actually matter on the boss build. And Secret Garden, for those unaware, is a weapon that gives you a skill power buff in the same type as your reactor optimization bonus, which is crazy, whenever you use a tech skill. And since the overwhelming majority of Freyna's skills are tech tech skills, it seems like a win-win in either case, right? The problem is that Secret Garden, whenever you swap weapons, loses the power buff, and because Baptism counts as a weapon swap when activated, the bonus is lost the moment you activate. It's the same reason you don't see people using Secret Garden on Lepic. It's fine to use it still, but it just doesn't actually matter. Now on to what most of you are probably curious about, which is to crit or not to crit. What you see on screen right now is a breakdown for a full crit build on Freyna, using those mods against Devourer. With his crit resist factoring in, and if you don't know too much about that, go watch my video on enemy crit resists, Baptism's weapon only damage, sum total average, with all the shots, comes out to about 21 million damage. Not terribly surprising, given what you saw me do to the poor boy earlier. Someone will probably complain that I don't have front lines equipped, but you'll notice that even on the full crit build, front lines is a damage loss compared to toxic integration, which is why I have that on here. 21 million damage is by no means bad, but what a lot of us were not expecting were the new mods that they added in this update, particularly the attribute amplification mods, which utterly fuck over your crit damage, and that'll turn most people off to them. But what about characters with lower crit rate, like Freyna? If we bump over the crit review to make some space, the new section is an overview on the build I mentioned earlier, and you'll notice that even without any crit, I literally have 0 crit rate. It is impossible for me to have any benefit that way. I still come out ahead of the full crit build, and straight up anyone telling you to run crit on 5% characters now, after the update, is in fact trolling you. Because not only do we get more damage than the full crit build, but we open up 2 more mod slots for whatever you'd like, because we don't need to use 4 crit mods anymore, we're just running 2 power mods instead. And in my case, that opened up space for Venom Syncytium and Overwhelming Shield. On some characters, just opening up the 2 mods can give us up to a 40% damage increase, which is something we will talk about in another video. But I think the coolest part about this is there is no crit on these characters anymore with these mods. And because of that, sure, more damage than the average damage on a crit damage build is cool. But you want to know what's cooler? It's all fucking guaranteed. No crit means no chance. What you see me doing in this video is literally what you will get with the same exact gear. There's no chance to have bad RNG and enrage the boss. There's no bad luck when you didn't do enough damage. There's no variability at all. We can all take this exact same build in and see the exact same results, no matter how many times we do it. And I actually really like that. Is she gonna murk the bosses faster than Haley can? Of course not. But have you ever felt the pain of whiffing a crit on Haley? Because it hurts. Will you ever feel that pain on Freyna? Obviously fucking not. She is way more reliable at killing the earlier bosses than Haley is, and much better for farming them, in my opinion. To wrap up the boss build though, if you do take this build into a much harder boss or a group setting where the boss isn't guaranteed to die in one phase between you and your team, then you can instead take the build shown right now as a good alternative that isn't made of paper mache and will survive more hits while also having a much better cooldown to get your baptism back up faster to use again. For the mobbing build, it's actually pretty close to the cooldown version of the boss build we just showed, but we drop spear and shield along with tech amplification and replace them with maximize range and skill expansion, and then swap out ambush with MP collector. For the ability augment, you don't actually need to run one, but my preferred mobbing augment is contagion, which removes the secondary toxin effects from all your abilities, but also makes it so if an enemy dies from the primary toxin effect of any of your abilities, the toxin effect will spread to nearby enemies, creating a very nice chain of death and propagation. That honestly reminds me of Saren in Warframe, though not quite as crazy. The cooldown is obviously there to help you get your skills back faster. MP collector helps with the MP issues that arise by having your skills back faster, and then that range is there so that way your skill puddles are the size of Argentina when you cast them. Mobbing Freyna is honestly just a fucking stupid experience. She'll never be faster than Bunny, because Bunny can obviously just run faster, but in terms of general dungeon clearing and just blowing enemies off the face of the map, Freyna wins, guys, and oh my god, she is fun for dungeons. Just think of her as a lazier Bunny where you don't even need to move anymore. Enemies just explode. Her mobbing components would just be the same, but if you care strictly about best in slot on the Reactor, then the weapon would be Secret Garden with range and tech power ratio. And then that is pretty much it. There was another Descendant mod that released for Ultimate Freyna today, but that would be a gun-based build, whereas this was skill-based, and I did want to keep them separate. So I might talk about that one in another video later, if I don't end up talking about our Lord and Savior Kyle first. Also, if you do want to dick around with Freyna's math using the different mods, then as usual, I did work out all her quirks and have an update that I will push to my website later so you can fiddle with and customize your own builds.